Venezuela, officially called the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, is a sovereign country in the northernmost part of South America, sitting along the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. It is roughly triangular in shape, with more than 2,800 kilometers of coastline that meets warm tropical waters to the north. The nation shares land borders with Colombia to the west, Brazil to the south, and Guyana to the east, making it a geographic bridge between the Caribbean region and the continental interior of South America. Its capital and largest city, Caracas, lies in the northern part of the country high enough above the coast to enjoy slightly cooler mountain air, placing it closer to the U.S. Gulf Coast than many might expect. But this geographic advantage is matched by a staggering economic reality. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, about 303 billion barrels, roughly 17% of global crude oil reserves, dwarfing most countries on Earth. For decades, oil has been the lifeblood of its economy. Today, petroleum still generates around 90 to 95% of Venezuela's export earnings and provides about 58% of government revenue, anchoring everything from public spending to foreign exchange receipts. In essence, Venezuela's northern location near the U.S. sets the stage for strategic ties with global markets, but its economic fortunes remain tightly bound to oil, a resource that both defines its wealth and exposes its vulnerability. At one time, Venezuela's oil industry was a crown jewel, a source of wealth that should have made the nation prosperous. But decades of corruption and political interference turned that promise into ruin. Instead of reinvesting billions of dollars into maintenance, technology, and new fields, successive governments turned the state oil company PDVSA into a political machine. Leaders rewarded loyalists with lucrative contracts, many of them inflated or never fulfilled, diverting funds into private hands rather than productive use. The scale of the loss is staggering. Analysts estimate that between $300 billion and $500 billion in oil revenues was siphoned off through embezzlement, overpriced contracts, and fraud since the early 2000s, money that might have modernized Venezuela's energy infrastructure or stabilized its economy. Corruption stripped PDVSA of its core strengths. Skilled engineers were fired or replaced with political appointees, technical expertise drained away, and oversight mechanisms were weakened or eliminated. By the early 2020s, the results were unmistakable. Oil production plunged from over 3 million barrels per day in the late 1990s to under 700,000 bpd, a collapse driven not just by global price swings, but by stolen revenues, mismanagement, and underinvestment. As oil revenues dried up, Venezuela's broader economy felt the shockwaves. The government, heavily dependent on petroleum for over half of its budget revenues, faced massive fiscal shortfalls, foreign exchange shortages, and ballooning debt. Public services collapsed, inflation soared, and basic imports became scarce. In the end, corruption didn't just cripple a company, it crippled a nation. A country with the world's largest proven oil reserves became synonymous with economic despair, illustrating how unchecked corruption can turn abundance into collapse. From the Caribbean shores of Caracas to the oil refineries of Houston, Venezuela's vast energy wealth has become central to U.S. foreign policy under President Donald Trump. Venezuela holds the largest proven crude oil reserves in the world, roughly 303 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia or Russia. That immense potential has made the country a strategic prize in global energy geopolitics. In early January 2026, the United States launched a military operation that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, framing it as part of a campaign against narco-terrorism and regional instability, but analysts and global reporting confirmed that the move was also aimed at forcing regime change and gaining control over Venezuela's oil industry. Once Maduro was removed from power, the Trump administration moved quickly to assert control over Venezuelan crude exports. The U.S. now plans to directly market millions of barrels of previously sanctioned oil to American and global markets, with Trump stating that 30 to 50 million barrels will be sold at market price and the proceeds controlled by Washington. Trump's objectives are threefold. Lower global oil prices. By increasing supply, Trump has said he seeks to push prices down toward his target of around $50 a barrel to benefit U.S. consumers and weaken energy rivals. Cut geopolitical rivals out of key energy markets, diverting Venezuelan oil from buyers like China and Russia toward the U.S. undermines their influence and strengthens American leverage. rebuild the Venezuelan petroeconomy under U.S. oversight. Trump and senior officials have pushed for American oil companies to invest billions in reviving Venezuela's dilapidated oil infrastructure, promising profits and influence, though actual investment commitments remain uncertain. Critics around the world have condemned the operation. Independent legal experts and institutions argue that forcibly removing a sovereign leader and capturing his government's oil assets violates international law and sets a dangerous precedent. The global implications are profound. Energy markets could be reshaped by U.S. control over the Western Hemisphere's largest oil reserve, with potential price effects felt from Asia to Europe. Geopolitical alignments may shift as nations reassess their alliances and energy dependencies. Regional stability in Latin America could face turmoil as neighbors react to U.S. intervention and its assertion of long-term influence over Venezuelan resources. In short, the Trump administration's pursuit of Venezuela's oil isn't just about fuel. It's about power, markets, and influence, and the world is watching to see whether this bold strategy reshapes the 21st century geopolitical landscape. If you want to understand money, power, and the forces shaping the global economy, don't just watch, stay informed. Hit subscribe to Money Matters, where we break down finance, geopolitics, and real-world wealth stories in a clear, no-nonsense way. Subscribe to Money Matters, because when it comes to the world, money always matters.